In 2021, Andy Weir published Project Hail Mary. That same year, it was awarded the Goodreads Reader's Choice Award. Readers called it brilliant, emotional, life-changing. But when I read it, something just didn't click. This is BookTok Bookings.
I don't want to buy this book. It's bad.
If I weren't doing this for the bit.
I saw this book featured on many wrap-ups at the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026. I myself tried to read it earlier that year and DNF'd it because it was just that bad. After posting about this, I received several comments of people encouraging me to give it another shot. So I did just that. Today, on BookTok Bookings, we will be seeing if Project Hail Mary is guilty or not guilty of 5 counts of BookTok crimes. Today's suspect, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Project Hail Mary is a science fiction book that follows a man who wakes up alone in a spaceship with no memory of who he is, where he came from, or why he's in outer space. And his 2 fellow astronauts, they're dead. Yeah, I really like science fiction. It's one of my top genres that I read. And I was excited to dig into this the first time because the premise is really interesting. It follows a man who wakes up in space, not remembering who he is or what his mission is, but he does know that it's up to him to save humanity. That sounds interesting. That's a great premise. It's a great idea. Andy Weir has a lot of great ideas about science fiction. We're talking about the execution of those ideas here today. In Project Hail Mary, the timeline is non-linear. We follow Rylan as he's in the spaceship and flashbacks that go back to the events leading up to him being sent off into space. So we kind of go back and forth in between both of those things. It's interesting. I really enjoy a non-linear timeline. Now I know what you're asking. Why is the Earth in peril? And that is slowly answered between these flashbacks as Ryland gets his memories back. The reason why he's in space is because they've discovered a sort of living bacteria. Okay, well, all bacteria is living. That's not needed to be said. But they discover something that Ryland Grace's character deems astrophage. This is a microorganism that is eating and storing the energy of the sun and using that energy to propel themselves across space to get hungry, and then they come back to the sun and absorb more of the sun's energy, so slowly decreasing the temperature of the sun, which will eventually result in catastrophic changes on the Earth, aka Ice Age, aka world spread death, aka everybody's screwed. Ryland Grace realizes he's in space looking for a sun that is not being affected by that bacteria, not being affected by astrophage. And they have found a sun that is not affected. So humanity built a spaceship, sent 3 astronauts out to go and find out why that sun is immune or protected, so that he can hopefully send that information back to Earth to save the day. Great. So far you're thinking, wow, Mallory, this is going to be a really easy case. It's obviously not guilty. Let's get into that a little bit more. We're going to start off by introducing you to some of the main characters, all right? Our first main character is Ryland Grace. This guy is a doctor, and he used to be a microbiologist, but he wrote a paper arguing that not all life forms needed H2O to live. At which point, all of the scientific community said, "Oh, you stupid idiot, that could never happen." So he quit and became a middle school / junior high school teacher. I'll be honest, I don't think it's ever explicitly stated what grade he teaches. Maybe it was 7th grade, maybe it was 8th grade. Either way, he's a teacher now. And he gets roped in to solving the problem of the astrophage because of his paper regarding H2O not being dependent on life forms. No, life forms not being dependent on H2O, because the scientists who have collected some of this microorganisms have found out that maybe it doesn't need water to live. So they pull in the only guy who knows anything about that. He eventually leaves his teaching job very abruptly because he's so dedicated to trying to find out the solution to this. He's very intrigued with what's happening. He does pages and pages of science experiments, all of which are really boring, and it really reads like a scientific paper in that it goes, I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. I tried this again, it didn't work. I tried that. Oh, and it magically worked. But the thing is, you don't watch him do those experiments. You listen to him tell his supervisor about the experiments he did. AKA telling, not showing, which is just not always the most successful way to show a good story. That's Ryland Grace. He's in space. He has a doctorate. He also loves teaching. He's a cool guy. He describes himself as having a beach bod in the beginning. I hated that. Our next character is Eva Stratt. She is the woman who is kind of single-handedly in charge of the cooperation of the entire Earth in order to find a solution. She's the HBIC, head bitch in charge. I noticed a common thread with a lot of the characters in this book that were women, which is that they really aren't written well at all. I liked how complex Stratt was. It's just the way that other people talk about Stratt that made me upset. Miss Stratt, Eva Stratt, Commander Stratt, is the one who ropes in Ryland Grace at the beginning of the book and basically abducts him for a couple of days so that he can try to solve what's going on with the astrophage. Which, of course, he figures out very quickly, and I guess maybe not easily because he goes through a lot of different types of experiments, but it's written really fast and kind of boring, so yeah. Anyway, we're going to start with just these two characters in the beginning. We'll introduce a couple more later on, but unsurprisingly, this is a pretty small cast because he's alone in a spaceship, and it's a top secret mission that not a lot of people are in the loop on to the degree that Ryland is. Here's my handy dandy little envelope full of evidence. We are looking at our first charge. First degree literary hand-holding. This book is full of redundant explanations of the same concepts over and over and over again. This book is guilty of spelling it out for readers. I don't like when books spell it out for readers. Readers are smart. They can piece things together if you are laying them out well. See? We also have our first quote from the book. This is on page 55. I'm going to read it in the beach bod voice that Ryland Grace would like me to. Beneath me is the lab. On the diagram, that room is labeled lab. That is the same sentence twice in a row. We also have a quote from one of our friends over on booktok. Quote, I got about 30 pages into this book and had to DNF it because I found the narration so cringe. Crying, laughing emoji. The emojis are important. They really give the tone of the comment. I'm glad I wasn't alone in thinking this. I know I wasn't alone because I have another witness I would like to call to the stand. Please take it away, myself from 2 weeks ago.
If I wasn't doing this for the bit, I would DNF this book for a second time. I'm almost to chapter 5, so like I'm giving it more of a try. And I just don't like the writing style and the tone. I don't think it's good. And I mean, art is subjective, so you can like what you like and dislike what you dislike. I just don't think the writing's good though. And he's in the spaceship, slowly getting to know it, and he finds a diagram like labeling everything in the spaceship. and he finds fuel canisters, and some of them are empty and some of them are full of this astrophage stuff. And I just feel like a lot of the writing in this book is so spelled out. He's learning things, which is good, but the way that it's written is just so obvious to me, I guess. Like, here's an example. This is him trying to figure out why that same bacteria stuff is on his ship in the fuel canisters. I paired the diagram more closely. Why is there 2,000 kilograms of astrophage on this ship? I've got a strong suspicion it's fuel. And why not? Astrophage can propel itself with light and has absurd energy storing capability. It's had God knows how many billion years of evolution just to get good at it. Just like a horse is more energy efficient than a truck, astrophage is more energy efficient than a spaceship. Okay, that explains why there's a buttload of astrophage on the ship. It's fuel, but why put a diagram of the ship on this screen? It's like putting a blueprint of a car on its gas gauge. Why did you need 3 paragraphs to explain that? And it's just explaining the same thing over and over again. It's redundant. And this has happened multiple times in this book. I mean, it makes sense to me why a spaceship would have a diagram on itself, especially if you were sent into space and put into a coma. You would know that there's a possibility that people might not wake up completely functional, and so of course there would be a manual on board. That doesn't seem that far out to me. Many people tried defending this book by saying that you just have to get through the first 5 or 6 chapters, or get to the 15% mark. And to that I say, write a better book. If your book isn't good from the beginning and doesn't hook readers from the beginning, then that's an issue. This happens often when people say, oh, just get to the second book in the series, that's where it really picks up. And I say, why didn't you start your book there? Why didn't you start your series there where it was good? You shouldn't have to fight to earn your reader's attention. You should be putting the groundwork in from that first word. And the first time I read this book, I didn't. I read the first chapter and promptly requested a return for my Audible credit because I hated it so bad. And some people said that wasn't a fair enough give for this book, to which I say, yeah, you're right. I'll give it another chance. I'll give it that 5 or 6 chapter mark. And I did, and spoiler alert, I still hated it. And that's a wrap on our first charge. We are at our second charge, inconsistent characterization. Oftentimes throughout this book, I felt like there were approximately 8 different versions of Ryland Grace, and 2 or 3 different versions of another character we'll get into later. There were just a lot of choices that didn't feel motivated by the same person, by the same character to me. And there were a couple of great examples of this. My favorite one was, while out in space, nearing that secondary star that they're investigating, there's a beautiful planet out there that Ryland is looking at, and he's like, wow, this is beautiful. And he says, on page 286, man, what I wouldn't give for a lander, because he wants to go and explore the outer space. And then on the next page, 287, he suddenly doesn't want to go outside to collect his sample, which would lead to discovering new things about that other planet and that other solar system. It just doesn't make sense. And I can understand having character growth, different character from the beginning, get different character in the end. There's a different Ryland in the flashbacks versus the Ryland on the spaceship. That makes sense to me. I think that's grounded. But having a scientist in outer space experiencing, for the first time in all of humanity, witnessing this beautiful planet before him and going, wow, I wish I could see it. And then the next page, he changes his mind because he's feeling too lazy. I believe it's time to introduce a third character. If you've gotten this far and you haven't read the book and you want to, I recommend turning off, because this next character is a huge spoiler. And that character is the one and only Rocky. Everybody clap. Everybody clap for Rocky.
Rocky is overwhelmingly most people's favorite character in this book, and I see why. He's a alien, he's very charming, he's very silly, and he's cute, okay? Yeah, he's really cute. And Ryland finds this alien once he gets to that secondary solar system. He gets to the sun of Tau Ceti. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if it's not. And when he enters the orbit of this solar system, of this sun, he realizes that there's a secondary spaceship out there at the same sun. And he meets Rocky. Rocky is in a spaceship that's like, I think he said about 8 times as big as his. And he is also the only one on his spaceship. They attempt to communicate across the way, and eventually Rocky, who is an engineer, creates a tunnel connecting their 2 spaceships, and Rocky boards Grace's spaceship as they decide to work together to try to solve the problem that's killing both of their planets. Throughout this book, Ryland and Rocky both start learning each other's languages. I really liked how Weir wrote Rocky's language. It was written in music notes because they don't have vocal cords. They have air systems that they kind of whistle through or sing through, which was really interesting. Ryland, once again, quickly problem solves and finds a way to take the input of his sound and translate it into English. It was pretty interesting. It happened really quickly and really easily, which is a common thread for all of the issues that Ryland faces in this book. On page 278, Rocky uses the word amazing, and then for the rest of the book uses the word amaze instead. I think it's in an effort to make his English sound disjointed, or that makes sense, but you used the word amazing once already, so he would use the word amazing every other time. If he didn't know that add ing rule for the word amazing, why would he not do it for the rest of the book? I know it's a small thing, it really doesn't matter that much, but it did bug me. But I was in the headspace to be bugged at this point because I still wasn't liking the book. There were times when the characters would take turns being the smart one and being the dumb one, and it was all in an effort to explain things to the audience, which was interesting because both of these life forms were capable of creating spaceships that can travel light years and trying to find very sophisticated answers to huge problems in their own planets. Like, it just didn't make sense to me that sometimes they'd be dumb and sometimes they'd be smart. And that is a wrap for our evidence for charge number 2. Next up, the third charge, a criminal lack of tension. If you were to read a sci-fi novel set in space, in order to make it interesting, you would need to have things go wrong on the spaceship. Otherwise, why are we reading it? I asked myself that same question for 3/4 of this book. It took 70% of this book before something went wrong in the spaceship. That's crazy to me. And the things that did go wrong throughout were easily resolved, very quickly resolved. Ryland, once he wakes up and he realizes he's using astrophage as a propellant for his spaceship, does the math and realizes that there's only enough fuel for him to get to Tau Ceti, not to return home. Once he says this to Rocky, his alien friend who's now aboard his ship, Rocky goes, "I have enough gas for you to get home." And then Ryland goes, "Thank you. Oh my God." And then that's it. Wow. Thanks for letting us feel tense for a full chapter before cutting it off. And that's what happened every time something went wrong. Rocky was able to fix it, or Ryland was able to fix it very quickly, and for most of the problems, pretty easily as well. When I started this book, it was kind of set up to be a ticking time factor. The earlier they can get the information back to Earth, the less damage Earth will have done to it. But as it goes on, time just kept moving and moving, and it didn't feel like there was much of a rush. And the whole time I was thinking, you have the answers, send it back to Earth. Why are you waiting? Why not send the answers back to Earth? And they just kept waiting. What? Once again, Where's the tension? But I will say there is tension in a way that I didn't expect it initially. Due to the flashbacks going back and forth between past and present, we do get to slowly solve the mystery of A, why Ryland Grace has been sent into outer space, and B, how he's going to solve the problem that the Earth is experiencing. And that does give tension in an outside way, outside of the spaceship itself. In those flashbacks, we get to see Eva Stratt creating her team full of all of the best people in the world, the top of the top, working together to try to find a solution for humanity. And we get a lot of good progress in these ways of Ryland figuring out how astrophage breed to get more astrophage. We find out that there is a sun that's not being affected by the astrophage. We watch as they build a spaceship to send a specialized team of personnel out to space to find out why that sun is immune. You know, those kind of tense moments were interesting, even if it wasn't tension in the spaceship itself. I just wanted more space things to go wrong. Speaking of these flashbacks, this is a great way to lead us into our fourth charge. Reckless endangerment of representation. All right, people. This is our most severe one. This is the one which I have the most evidence for. A lot of the side characters that I haven't spoken about yet are gross stereotyped versions of people. We have a Russian that only drinks vodka. We have a woman scientist who speaks like a valley girl because she's just a girl. We have multiple scientists who like numbers more than people and don't know how to communicate emotionally, all of which are just really lazy stereotypes, in my opinion. There's quite a few quotes in here from when he was describing people that just didn't make me feel great, one of which was on page 90. A political-looking man raised his hand and spoke with some kind of African accent. It just doesn't make you feel great to read that. There's better ways to describe people. Some people argued that Weir was purposefully putting racism and sexism in here as a commentary on the subject. They said it's not supposed to feel good. Which I agree. I think there's a lot of books that do that well. I think Red Rising is a great example of that, along with Blood Over Bright Haven, which directly comment on racism and classism and sexism purposefully as a plot point with a lot more conscious awareness of how they're approaching those subjects. It doesn't come across that way to me in this book. There's another example when Stratt is talking about the two different teams of astronauts she has. She has an A team and a B team, so that if something happens to A team, they have a backup B team to put those people in. And she separates them based on sex. And she has a moment where she's talking to Ryland about this, and she says, "It'll just get too messy. If I put a boy and a girl up in a spaceship by themselves, funny business is gonna happen." And Ryland Grace does say, "Hey, that's a little sexist." And Stratt goes, "It is, but it's right. Like, I'm correct." And so I think like there is something to be said that Weir was trying to maybe approach that in that way, but it's not successful. And in that specific scene, it then came across as sexist and homophobic. Like, you put any three people alone in a spaceship for 8 years, you know, you don't know what kind of attractions or lack thereof might happen. You just don't. It doesn't matter what their sex is, okay? Does that make sense? I have 2 more examples of that sexism, one of which happens on page 284. Sorry, I had to pee, like, so bad, said the world's smartest and most accomplished microbiologist, who's a woman, by the way. Oh, this woman is the most accomplished microbiologist, but she's just like, just a girl. Bleh. Lotus says stand up to sexism. The other great example of the sexism, and this one's the grossest in my opinion, comes from a character who's not on our list. This conversation is between Dr. Ryland Grace and two characters I have yet to introduce, Dr. Dubois and Ilyukina. Dr. Dubois is A-Team's biologist, and Ilyukina is A-Team's engineer, and they are talking to Ryland Grace about Miss Strat. All right? The point is, Dubois said, you are somehow special to Miss Strat. I had assumed you two were engaged in sexual congress. My mouth fell agape. What? Are you out of your mind? No way. Huh, said Ilyukina. Perhaps you should be. She is uptight. She could use a good roll in the hay. Are you kidding me? You guys, can we not talk about women who are in charge of things this way? It happens all the time, where you have a strong woman who's making difficult decisions and she's just written off as being too uptight, too bossy, too so many things. And you think she would just benefit from a good lay? What the hell is wrong with this book? Okay, I have talked enough about reckless endangerment of representation. We are up to our fifth and final charge. Overhyped. There, I said it. I think this book is overhyped. Watch that, booktok. That was so stupid. As stated earlier, I tried reading this book in, I think, the latter half of 2025, and I DNF'd it because I didn't enjoy it. And I had a lot of people encouraging me to try it again because they really did think it was great. And I saw this book on so many people's top 5 of 2025, or I didn't see this book coming, but it was so fantastic. So many creators, so many readers posted this. And I mean, it has a 4.9 stars on Audible, and that's with 236,000 reviews. And on Goodreads, it has a 4.5 with over 1 million ratings. That's insane. That is a very highly rated book. So imagine my surprise when I read it and I thought it was god-awful. Here's a speed read of some of the comments I got following my post about how I hated this book and didn't want to try it again. I really like it. It follows a smart person solving tricky problems in clever ways. I love that sort of thing. This book had me guessing the entire time. As someone who finds stories predictable, I was not expecting the plot to progress as it did. If you're not willing to give it more than a chapter to get into it, there's probably low hopes of you liking it. Try to keep an open mind and get a couple more chapters in before you decide. These are great things. I had a lot of people mentioning the friendship between Rocky and Ryland being their favorite part of the book. And that's a fast way to get me to read something. If you tell me there's a found family moment or friendship moment, I will be reading. I even had one person say, I thought this was rage bait. I've never come across anyone who didn't like this book. Well, joke's on them. I hate it even more now that I've finished it. And no, it's not rage bait on purpose. I just really think it's a bad book. Interesting enough, when I first started reading this, I listened to the audiobook and I couldn't handle it. So I picked it up on Kindle to try to read it to see if that would be easier. And I had a lot of people contradicting which one was better. The audiobook of this book is probably one of the best audiobooks ever made. As a huge space nerd, I love pretty much any sci-fi read, but the voice actor who narrates the audiobook grated on my ears at first. Putting it on a higher speed helped me get past it, and I ended up loving the story. I thought that was interesting that almost every person was either stay away from the audiobook or the audiobook's the way to go. And I tried it and I thought it was a really bad audiobook, but that's the beauty about art. It's subjective. Thus, we close the discovery on Project Hail Mary. I bet you're wondering, wow, Mallory, you're really just beating up on this book. Did you like anything about it? To which I say, yes! Bring forward the defense. Exhibit A, the ending. I really enjoyed the ending of this book. I know I've spent the last, 45 minutes saying about how much I hated this book, but I'm a complex individual, and there are often good things to be found inside of bad things. I will cut to my witness talking about the ending of this book and the pros and cons therein. There's been some good twists. The first twist is that Ryland Grace did not volunteer to go on the spaceship. He was drugged and forced to go onto the spaceship. That's good. That's interesting. It makes his character more complex and makes Miss Stratt's character more complex because she forces him into it. Another thing they've solved is how to kill the astrophage. They found the natural predator of astrophage, which they have named Toamoeba because it's the son of Toe and it's an amoeba. Taumoeba maybe? But now they're trying to figure out how to get Taumoeba back to the planets that have been affected. And in the process of doing that, the Taumoeba ate all of the astrophage that is on the Hail Mary ship, which means they have no fuel left. All of the other astrophage is either dead or locked away in Rocky's little airlock that has his atmosphere in it. But now they're breeding more Taumoeba to create stronger Taumoeba, basically. But they said in order to breed more Taumoeba, they needed more astrophage, but all of the astrophage has been eaten. So how are they breeding more? It just doesn't make sense, along with a lot of other things in this book that just are stupid. Okay, I'm at 85%, so I'm just gonna keep going. The way they wrap up this book was really fascinating. It did not go where I thought it would, and I liked it. Spoiler alert. At the end, they figure out how to defeat the astrophage, and Ryland sends home the information and the microorganism itself that attacks and eats astrophage in order to save the Earth. But on his way back home as he's doing this, that exact organism gets loose and he stops his middle of his space journey on his way home, and he realizes that in an effort to create the Taumoeba that would kill the astrophage, he accidentally made it immune to the container that he was holding it in. And in this process, he realizes that Rocky, who has also been sent home to his home planet, is in severe danger of his astrophage getting eaten, and then he will also be stranded in space with no way to get home. So Ryland decides to send all of the information back to Earth, send the Taumoeba back to Earth, and turns his ship around to go save Rocky. And then he saves Rocky. It was a really, really impactful moment. It was great to see them reunited and see Rocky realize that Ryland sacrificed his life back on Earth to help Rocky get back to his home planet and save his species too. And Ryland ends up living on Rocky's planet for the rest of his life. He becomes old. He teaches future generations of Iridians, which is the name of the species that Ryland made up for them. It's really tender. Ryland does eat synthesized human meat at the end of the book. That was really interesting. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that, but it was unique to say the least. Exhibit B! Friendship. This is the reason most people liked this book. Getting to see the relationship build between Ryland Grace and Rocky is really touching, and like I said in that last exhibit, Ryland ends up sacrificing so much to make sure that Rocky is safe and that Rocky can save his planet as well. Ryland covers Earth. He makes sure Earth gets it all figured out, and at the end of the book, the Iridians use Ryland's technology to upgrade their personal technology. They're able to see the Earth's sun regain its temperature, so Ryland knows that even the Earth is in better hands, and it was really lovely. And there were some fun moments between Ryland between Ryland and Rocky, getting to learn each other's languages, getting to learn how each other operate. Like, there's a really great moment when Ryland is talking about how Rocky's a good person for sacrificing everything to come and save the mission, and Rocky says the same thing about Ryland, and they're both like, oh, not everybody would do this, and they're like, oh, we're good people. Like, that's a tender moment. I like when, like, there's a moment when Ryland teaches Rocky what sarcasm means, and then Rocky uses it pretty frequently throughout the rest of the book. Like, those kind of moments are fun, those interactions are fun, and it was correct that it was the only thing going for me in this book. Exhibit C, non-linear timeline. My last exhibit for the defense is non-linear timeline. I love a book written in non-linear timelines. I enjoyed the flashbacks for the most part. There were some things that I had an issue with, but ultimately it wasn't that big of a deal in comparison to the other things I didn't like about this book. I think the non-linear timeline did a lot of favors for adding tension into the story that wasn't necessarily tension inside the spaceship or between Rocky and Ryland. Like, that's something else I liked about the friendship. There wasn't ever a moment where Rocky and Ryland were like, I'm gonna kill the other alien, or, oh, you misunderstood me and now I'm not talking to you. Like, it was good, okay? It was good. Those moments were good. The timeline was fascinating. It was pretty well paced throughout between when it was in the past and when it was the future. For the most part, when I was reading, as actively engaged as I could be in this book, in whichever flashback or present moment I was in. Sometimes when you have multiple POVs or multiple timelines, I find myself wishing I was in the other one. You know, there's like sometimes one that lacks. But I really liked both of them as much as I could. Let's look at some of our other connections that we have had throughout our case, and then we will make a verdict. In the case of Project Hail Mary versus the readers, we have charged Project Hail Mary with 5 counts of booktok crimes. We have given them 3 exhibits of defense, and there's only one question left to ask. Are they guilty or not guilty of being a bad book? Project Hail Mary, I find you guilty! Project Hail Mary, you will hereby be sentenced to serving 36 years in space, trapped in a spaceship with Andy Weir, and the only thing you have to eat is your so beloved me burgers. That's awful. I hope you have time to think about what you've done to the booktok community as a whole. Well, me as a whole. Booktok really liked you. I didn't. I'm Mallory Grace, and this has been Booktok Bookings. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody. I had a lot of fun, in case you couldn't tell. Who knows which book should go right here next? Drop a comment. Which booktok recommendation should we venture into next? I would love to know. And I hope you guys read something today that really grinds your gears, because I think it's important to read things that you don't like. You learn a lot more watching media, taking in media that you don't like, than taking in media that you do like. Bye-bye.